Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Visit Tuscaloosa.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome into the latest edition of Tider Insider TV alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, and it is 2025, and we're back on Tuesday night. And this is our first show of 2025. Last week and the week before, of course, we did it on Monday, so we weren't on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. But we have not talked to you since the ReliaQuest Bowl, which turned out to be quite a letdown for Alabama and its fans down in Tampa against Michigan. The Crimson Tide lost to the Wolverines for the second straight bowl game, 19-13 the final. Of course, last year the stakes were a lot higher as Alabama lost to the College Football Playoff semifinal at the Rose Bowl in the game that Alabama lost in overtime. This one just got off to a bad start, man. I mean, a monsoon hit. Jalen Milroe was having problems with ball security, fumbling, throwing interceptions, which I'm trying to wonder out why you really were throwing the ball at this point. But so before you knew it, they also went for it on their opening possession inside their own territory, inside their Bama side of the 50, and didn't make it. That was like a turnover. It was 16-0 before you knew what hit you. Now, Alabama fought back. Give them credit. They got this thing to 16-10 and then 19-13 late. Alabama had a chance. Had a first down and 10 at the 15-yard line after a screen pass to Jam Miller. Of course, defense stepping up late and really the entire game to keep Alabama in it. But they had their chances at the end, but 4 straight incompletions finished the game. Alabama, this is the last one right here. Rico Scott was open. Milroe got his arm hit. Couldn't avoid the pressure. 19-13 the final. Rodney, let's break it down. Let's start with Milroe and what turned out to be his final game for Alabama. He announced after the game that he is going to turn to the NFL draft. 3 turnovers, not the way any of them that are leaving wanted to go out, but certainly not the way he wanted to go out in his final game.
Well, no, it wasn't. But, we talked last week. You and I both picked Alabama to run away with this game.
Yeah, blowout.
Yeah, we predicted a blowout. And, you look at how depleted Michigan was. You got to give credit to them. I mean, the guys they had, they came out and played. They were prepared to play. It just looked like Alabama, kind of similar to the Oklahoma game. Didn't come out mentally ready to play. And, I mean, the first 10 minutes of the game, you turn the ball over 3 times, and suddenly you're down 16-0. You find yourself in a hole. And like you said, Gary, they did fight back, but really it was a disappointing performance. Some people talk about, well, was this a disappointing year? Well, it was to some extent. And Gary, we've talked about this repeatedly. Anytime you go through a major transition, it's really tough. And I think Alabama experienced a lot of the things that go with a transition in terms of the negative aspects of it throughout the season. Well,
it's simple. We said Michigan scored 16 points early in the game. They only scored 3 the rest of the way. Alabama outgained them by 70 yards, but the Tide was 4 of 13 on 3rd down, 0 of 3 on 4th down. Those 3 turnovers, could have come back and won it, but there's no doubt. But that's football. If Alabama just doesn't forget the fact that it didn't have to move the ball. If they just don't turn it over early in the game like that, they're going to win this football game.
But that's really what we've talked about all year long. Can Alabama avoid the mistakes that have gotten them beat? And, once again, those things crop up. You can go back to every single game. Was Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Oklahoma, this Michigan game. Alabama did a lot of things to self-destruct.
Yeah, Alabama 16.5-point favorite. They were favored on paper, but, obviously they don't play it on paper. They play it on grass. And in this case, Michigan beats Alabama for a second straight game. All right, it's time now for Coach Talk. And the fans were obviously not very pleased with the outcome. Alabama lost that game, failed to win 10 games for the first time since 2007. And head coach Kalen DeBoer, after the ReliaQuest Bowl, talked about how he'll take the disappointing result and hope to use it as a lesson.
We're going to take all these things that happened, and there's some things that happened in the game today too that we got to learn from and make sure that those mistakes don't hurt us a year from now. I don't care if it's turnovers, penalties. It's everything. And so to me, it's a success if we move forward and we take advantage of the lessons, even though we don't want to learn those lessons sometimes, right? Because they're hard. We're going to learn from those lessons, move forward, and be better next year because of it.
All right, Ryan, you already alluded to it as far as Coach DeBoer in a transition season, but overall, 9-4, didn't make it to Atlanta for an SEC championship game appearance, didn't make the playoff, lose the bowl game. How would you assess his first season at Tuscaloosa?
Look, I look at it this way, Gary. I look at it, you've got to take the whole first season. Like we said, this is a major transition. There is a lot that's going on in a transition like this. And I think when you look at when he first got here, what Kalen DeBoer and his staff did in terms of holding the recruiting class together, holding the roster together, adding some guys there at the end, and then also the portal work that they did, I thought leading up to the season, I would give them an A+. Now, once the season started, again, when you have these kind of transitions, there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be bumps in the road anyway, but they're kind of magnified when you have players and coaches working together for the first time. It's not an excuse. It's what happens a large majority of the time, and I think that's really what we saw. But let's just be honest about this, too. Now, Kalen DeBoer has to play to what he's inherited, the roster. It doesn't mean that these players aren't. Well, let's take Jalen Milroe, for example. Really good player, obviously. But at the same time, he's not a fit for what they do offensively. Now, they did adjust to try to work to his strengths. But I think now moving forward, you get a quarterback, hopefully, that will be someone that fits you, whether it's Ty Simpson or Austin Mack or maybe even the incoming freshman Keelan Russell, that fits what you want to do offensively. You have now an opportunity to upgrade your roster in terms of the receivers overall. You had two great ones in Bernard and Ryan Williams, but you're bringing in some other guys as well. And then defensively, I think the year in Kane Womack's system, I think as you saw the season go along, the players started to feel a lot more comfortable. They played a lot faster. I think that the production was really good on third downs, scoring defense. All those things were really promising. So now the question is, okay, you're updating your roster with the portal. You had another great recruiting season. You're going to make some coaching. Looks like a few coaching moves here. You've already made one, so we'll see what they do from here on out.
Yeah, Alabama still has a lot of talent on the squad, including guys that were eligible to return, but we already mentioned Jalen Milroe, along with Tyler Booker and Jahad Campbell, all announcing for the NFL Draft. Now, Mel Kiper, ESPN's draft guru, has Booker and Campbell as first-rounders in the latter half of the first round, and right now, Jalen Milroe is still projected as a second-round pick. Of course, all these guys will have a chance, Senior Bowl, Combine, things like that to improve their stock. But all three of those guys looking to move on to the NFL. And, of course, others have entered the portal. But Alabama's also looking to get players from the portal, and that continues to happen. Last night, University of Louisiana running back Draylen Washington announced he's transferring to Alabama. Washington spent 4 seasons with the Raging Cajuns. He had 229 carries for 1,343 yards and 9 touchdowns, so pretty productive guy. The Texas native, that Texas high school football, you know how good it is.
Yes, it is.
He is 5'9", 224, so he is a powerful downhill runner. He adds great power and speed, and Alabama's running back, Rodney, suddenly is a really deep running back room.
And again, I didn't know a lot about Draylen Washington, obviously. Haven't seen him play much in college. But I'll tell you this, watching his film, really impressed. You talked about his size. He runs with a lot of power now. He can run with power. You see him with that cut that he has, Gary. When he plants that foot, he turns it up. There you go, right there. Good feet. A lot of power. You see he's got good speed there. So I'm really excited to see once he gets here how he kind of blends in with Jam Miller and Richard Young, Kevin Riley, and Daniel Hill and A.K. Deere, the true freshman that's coming in.
And he needs people to block for him with starting right tackle Elijah Pritchett in the portal. Alabama has found some help in 6'6", 325-pound Arkel Engewam. Originally from Nigeria, he transferred to the Tide from Ball State. Hasn't played a lot of football. Young guy, still learning the game, played 100 snaps in just 4 games during the 2024 season, but he has a lot of athleticism, a lot of potential, great size. Listen, you got Wilkin Formby back at right tackle, so I don't know how much that Engewam will play right away, but I do think this is a young guy who has the prototypical build and has a lot of athleticism for his size. As he learns the game, I hate using this term, but it's true. He could be a diamond in the rough. He could be a guy that in a couple of years turns out to be a really, really good player.
And I think, Gary, with the way things are now, with guys jumping around, some guys want instant playing time. Obviously, he comes in with the understanding, hey, you know what, I'm probably not going to start right away, but I've got an opportunity to be developed by some really good coaches. And you look at the tools, you kind of went over those, the great size that he has. And I think you can bring in a guy like that, he's willing to stay, and you can mold him, develop him. Maybe in a year or so, he's a guy that can become a major contributor.
And we can't go over all the guys that are going in the portal and guys that are coming. We try to do the best we can. Obviously, you track it. We wouldn't have time to do it all on the show, but I do want to mention a couple announcements today that are big for Alabama. Keon Sabb announcing he's returning, and just a couple of minutes ago, Jaden Roberts announcing that he's returning.
Yeah, both those, and which we really expected that to happen. Keon Sabb had a good year until he went down with the injury. Again, I think the safety spot looks pretty good next year. And then who was the other one that announced?
Keon Sabb.
Yeah, well, we
talked about
Jaden Roberts. Yeah, of course, the offensive lineman, the right guard. Yeah, I think obviously you're going to keep most of those guys intact on the offensive line.
Yeah, and coaching news, Rodney said, already Colin Hitchler, the safeties coach, is not going to return. Chuck Morrell, longtime colleague and friend of Kalen DeBoer, will be the linebackers coach. He was in an off-the-field role this past season, and there could be more coaching movement and speculation about this guy, because on Monday the Seattle Seahawks announced that they were parting ways with offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb after just one season in the NFL, and there's already speculation he could be a part of Alabama's coaching staff in 2025. He was originally set to join DeBoer's staff in Tuscaloosa when DeBoer was hired at UA last year. He was here about 3 weeks, went back to Seattle, where he was living, of course, while he was at the University of Washington, to go to the NFL. Out after 1 year. He's been with DeBoer since 2007 in various roles. They've known each other a long, long time. Went all the way back to Sioux Falls. So, Rodney, I understand the speculation, but there is no certainty as to whether or not Ryan Grubb is coming back, right?
Yeah, I think we just have to, let it play out. I mean, I think it's certainly possible, but again, we have to let it play out. He had a great track record, obviously, at the University of Washington when he was with DeBoer.
And, of course, Nick Sheridan worked with Grubb, the current offensive coordinator, as the tight ends coach at the University of Washington. Well, still to come on TITV, Alabama men's and women's basketball teams off to fast starts in the SEC. We'll have much more on that. And we'll preview the big road test ahead for both of these teams, as it's all about winning at home and then trying to steal some on the road in the SEC. It's loaded on both the men's and the women's side. And in just a little bit, we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, that phone number, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Go ahead and give us a call now so you can get through, and we'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. And welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Visit Tuscaloosa. Go to visittuscaloosa.com. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. This past Saturday night, Alabama men's basketball opened play in the SEC in dominant fashion. 107-79 over previously unbeaten Oklahoma. Mark Sears was the leading scorer with 22 points. He finished the night with a double-double, as he also had 10 assists. He was marvelous. Bama shot 50% from the field, 31% from deep. Alabama's flashed at times. But, Rodney, this was the game we'd all been waiting for. From start to finish, they dominated a good team.
Well, obviously, when they put it together, we saw hints of this, too, in those preseason games, Gary, that they had. If they put it together, this team is really something special. I mean, obviously, they've got incredible talent. And, you and I talked about it. I know we talked about it on your radio show. You emphasized this a lot last week, was how important it was in this first SEC game at home. You got to claim it. You got to get it early. And they came out and they played extremely well, like you said, from start to finish.
Yeah, they were ready to go. Grant Nelson, a double-double, 12 points and 11 rebounds. Alabama dominated the glass 51-26, including 22 offensive rebounds. Can still shoot it better from three, which is scary for the opposition. Alabama had a noteworthy performance by Mark Sears as he passed 1,500 points in his career. Remember, he's only played here 2.5 years. How about that? But now you go on the road. Beginning with South Carolina tomorrow night in Columbia. And, Rodney, this is a South Carolina team that may have a little bit of insight into what Alabama does, because Nick Pringle, former Alabama forward, is on that team. He's having a good year. 10.4 points per game, 6.4 rebounds, 1.6 assists, and 66.7% shooting from the field. I always thought he was a good player at Alabama, but Alabama's a better team than South Carolina. I'll just go ahead and say that. But playing in Columbia, this won't not be a cakewalk.
The road. I mean, you got to pick off a few of these games on the road, Gary. And again, this is going to be a real challenge. I know Alabama's got a couple of key road games coming up.
Yeah, a lot of talk about Pringle and leaving Alabama, and then Amori coming in. And, right now, Pringle has the better stats. But I still think as the season goes along, Amori, with his size and physicality around that rim, is going to make a difference for Alabama. Well, the Alabama women's basketball team is up to number 18 in the Associated Press Top 25 poll. How about that? Wow. In the top 20 in the country, they've only lost one game, and they've opened up SEC play at 2-0 for the first time since 2003-2004. How about that? Wins over Florida and Missouri, and they beat Missouri without Sarah Ashley Barker, who was hurt in the Florida game. She is one of the best players in the league, and she is day-to-day. So Alabama is looking good, Rodney, but no Sarah Ashley Barker, and we may not have her for the next game. So everybody's having to kind of pitch in and make up for that loss.
Yeah.
She's a huge player, big part of this team.
Right, you're right. You got to get her back as soon as possible, obviously. But, Gary, we talked about the start they got off in the preseason play, the way they pre-conference play. And really it was a confidence builder. And to be able to start out 2-0, I mean, this team right here is going to be some possibly, and I don't know that sleeper's the right word, but they could be the sleeper team in the SEC.
Yeah, Alabama will fight number 5 Texas in Austin on Thursday night. So that will be a tough one. And Alabama men, after South Carolina, they go to Texas A&M on Saturday night. All right, when we come back, we're going to get to phone calls, emails, and tweets. That phone number again, and I'm told phone lines are open, 205-348-9882. Go ahead and give us a call. We want to hear from you. We'll be right back. Final week of the regular season, and Bama in the NFL is always happening. 3 guys really stood out this past weekend, including Bryce Young, man. What a turnaround for this guy. He accounted for 5 touchdowns, 3 through the air, even did the Steph Curry no-look touchdown pass there, Rodney. 2 on the ground as the Panthers beat the Falcons, knocked the Falcons out of the playoffs. Jahmyr Gibbs, he might have trumped what Bryce did. He scored 4 touchdowns for the Lions. That's a Detroit record, nearly 2,000 yards from scrimmage for the second year back, and he's making people, reminisce about Barry Sanders, as he may be like Barry Sanders. And then Derrick Henry on Saturday did his thing. 138 yards, 2 touchdowns as the Ravens won, and he becomes the first player ever with 2 1,900-yard rushing seasons in the NFL history. That's great. Of course, Jalen Hurts and Tua did not play, and don't know Jalen's status for the playoff. He's still in concussion protocol, so hopefully he'll get cleared. All right, let's get some phone calls, and we're going to go to Dan. And I had heard of no phone call. Dan's gone? All right, we're not going to Dan. Okay, we're going to get an email in. Our email question of the day is brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. When it comes to heating and air conditioning, KDM Service Corporation serves your family like our family. Dan was in Battleground. I was anxious to talk about Battleground, too. Does Alabama need a new quarterback in OC? There was no answer if Milroe didn't have room to run. That's from Terry down in Moundville. Well, they're getting a new quarterback because Jalen Milroe is going on the NFL. Nick Sheridan is the offensive coordinator. I'll say this. Even if Ryan Grubb comes on board, I have no doubt that Nick Sheridan is going to be on this staff. I think he and Coach DeBoer have a great relationship. I think they're on the same page. He's a young play caller. Hopefully, if he's calling plays again, as you said, maybe they'll have a quarterback that maybe fits what he wants to do a little more. So we'll see what happens.
Again, I think it's really a difficult transition when you're talking about that first year, especially with a quarterback that maybe hasn't been the style that you've used. Jalen turned the ball over quite a bit, obviously. That's not on the play caller. I know that there were some that criticized Sheridan for his play calling, whether that was justified or not. I mean, I really don't know. But moving forward, I know that they've got some good young quarterbacks. There you see Ty Simpson. He's waited his turn. He was a 5-star player coming out of high school. Got a ton of tools. I know that Austin Mack transferred in with DeBoer and Sheridan and Grubb, for that matter. Last year, there you see him, number 10. Got a lot of tools himself. He's a big kid. He's got a strong arm. He's young. He's still young, Gary. Mm-hmm. He should only be a true freshman. He's just 18 years old. And then, of course, you got Keelan Russell, the great high school player from Duncanville, Texas, who some rated the number 1 high school player in the country. I know he was the Gatorade National Player of the Year. So they have some talent.
All right, still to come on TITV, Alabama Gymnastics is gearing up for the season opener. And also, phone lines are open. I don't know what happened to Dan up in Battleground, but we'd like to take some phone calls, 205-348-9882. So we'll be right back with more of the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tighter Insider TV. Alabama Gymnastics making its season debut this Friday night inside Coleman Coliseum at 7 p.m. against North Carolina. Alabama should have a strong team. They're mixing in a lot of newcomers with several returners, and head coach is expecting a really good season for them. Ashley thinks she's got a team that will be really, really strong this year, although unfortunately freshman Love Burt is out for the season after a season-ending injury, and this is a big setback for Alabama. But they'll be ready to go, and we'll be looking forward to covering gymnastics this year. And welcome back to TITV alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris, and let's get out on the phone lines and talk with Jeff over in Trussville. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how are y'all doing tonight?
Doing well.
I'd like to know how whatever offensive scheme you have, you cannot throw 14 interceptions and turn the ball over as many times as we did this year.
Yeah, I think Rodney just said that in the last segment, that, you can't have the quarterback turning the ball over. That's got nothing to do with the offensive coordinator. That's something they'll be looking to clean up.
Yeah, you're right, Jeff. I mean, I think that's, again, I don't know how else to reiterate it other than it was, some really unfortunate turnovers, especially in those games when you're talking about the ones they lost, whether it was Tennessee. They did have a couple of turnovers in the Vanderbilt game as well, and then, of course, Oklahoma and Michigan.
All right, thanks for that phone call. Let's get to an email question before we have to hit the break, and it is from Nick in Birmingham. Is Nick Pringle better than Cliff Amore? We talked about the year that Pringle's having. Statistically this year, he's having a better year than Cliff Amore. I liked Pringle when he was at Alabama, quite frankly, but Amore is bigger, more physical in the paint, more of a rim protector, even though Pringle is a jumping jack. And I think over the course of the season, Amore is going to give Alabama what they're looking for. And I like Pringle. And Pringle's doing a great job at South Carolina. I certainly wouldn't say, though, that he's a better player than Cliff Amore.
No, I mean, I think right now, Alabama, with Amore, the way he's kind of, there you see him there, I think as the season goes on, just like you said, Gary, he's going to become more and more of a factor.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and thanks for the emails. And we're going to come back and wrap up this edition of TITV right after this. And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Tider Insider TV, presented by Visit Tuscaloosa. A reminder, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:35 on WVOA 23, or 10:30, I should say, or anytime online at WVOA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. We're going to leave you with photos from earlier today. Miles College has named former Alabama and NFL defensive back Chris Good as its new head football coach. It's his first head coaching job. He replaces another former Alabama and NFL defensive back, Sam Shade, who took the job at Alabama A&M. Good news. I think he'll do a great job at Miles College. Have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week.